Okay, we're holding on page 218, where it says V'hine Yitzchak le'nasan l'David klum, which is a little more than halfway down top of the page. The first word line is l'chavere. So we spoke about what Adam Erishin's contribution was. We spoke about what Avraham Avinu's contribution was. He contributed the Chassadim. Then we interjected with the whole long beer last week. Why is it that they were missing out on something if the mashal of the candle? And now the next question is, why didn't Yitzchak give anything? We see that Adam gave and Avraham gave. And as we'll see soon, Yaakov gave and Yosef gave. So l'cheira, Yitzchak is also an important component. Yitzchak represents Sfiras HaGvura, Midas HaGvura Vashem. And why wasn't David in the need of Gvura? He says, "V'hine Yitzchak le'nasam l'David klum." Yitzchak didn't give to David anything. V'hatam, what is the reason? V'fish madrega sehu din. The madrega of Yitzchak is din and Gvura. K'mei shekasa was the pasuk says, "Upachad Yitzchak hoyeli." Yaakov, when he refers to his father, he talks about pachad Yitzchak. The pachad is the idea of Gvura and din. David had no need to even mekabel ha'ara and hashpa of dinim, because even without that, dina de malchus adina, malchus has its own din. I guess he's using this as a dina de malchus adina, but it brings out the nekuda is that at the very essence of Malchus is the concept of din. Commissioner Kotzov, as the pasuk says, Melech b'mishpat yamid aretz, that the way that the king establishes the land is through mishpat. Elosh Yitzchak ubechin is based on the Elyon. Yitzchak represents the idea of based on the Elyon. V'nikra, and he's called in the Zohar, it's called dina kashya, heavy dinim. Malchus he based on atachten. Malchus represents Bezdan Atachten, when Ikran is called in the Zohar Dina Rafia, the weaker dinim. V'im kain, and if so, Re'in David Tzarech L'Kabel Klal Mi Yitzchak. David does not have to receive it all from Yitzchak. Shelo Yitoisfu V'Yizgadlu Hagvuras V'Dinim. We don't want that the dinim should be multiplied and should be added. Ela Napichut, to the contrary, should Tzarech L'Kabel Teisefes Chsadim Nisim Mekabel Chesed V'Hainu Mavram. Okay, so this so far this seems to be a technical idea. That since Dina de Malchus Adina and Melech b'mishpat Yamid Aretz, so therefore Malchus already has Din. And therefore it doesn't need to have any on its own. It doesn't need to have a contribution from Yitzchak. And then he brings down what it says in the Zohar, talks about it when it gets to the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. The first day of Rosh Hashanah is Dina Kashya, and the second day is Dina Rafya, two madregas and Din. And here he compares, it talks about Bezdin Shal Maila and Bezdin Shal Mata. But there's a deeper nikud over here. What is the idea of Gevura? In other words, when I say deeper, I mean the Pashup Pshat is Emer Drasheni. What's the deeper understanding of what's going on over here? The idea of din and Gevura is the idea of Minias Hashpa. Minia, in other words, of not being mashpia. Chesed is the idea of being mashpia, of giving, and Gvura is withholding. We'll get a little more into Gvura later on in today's lesson. What is the reason why Gvura withholds? But bottom line is that Gvura is the idea of withholding. And in Gvura, in its purest form, as it is, Gvura, the Midas HaGvura L'Mayla is absolute withholding. Withholding in a very, very great way. It's not mamash absolute, as we'll learn later, but its inyan is to withhold. What is Malchus? Malchus is the same Nekuda. Malchus is the same idea. The whole idea of Malchus is that in order for Malchus to be able to create creations, it has to withhold. It has to hide within it and withhold within it the whole hashpa, all the high oiris of Hatzilus. And in other words, if Gevura, to put in different words, if Gevura is the idea of Tzimtzum, Malchus is also the idea of Tzimtzum. So Malchus and Gevura really share similar attributes. The difference is that Gevura, as mentioned earlier, is in its purest form. Malchus, on the other hand, is Mekabel from all the Sfiras. So that's why Malchus is a weakened form of Gevura. That's why Malchus is called Dina Rafia. It's the weaker form of Gevura. And ultimately, it does let Oyer go through. And that is, in other words, from Gevura alone, there wouldn't be creations of the world. You can't have creation through Gevura. To the contrary, Gevura would never allow that. It's almost similar to the Medrash that talks about how in the beginning of the world, how there's a fight between Emes and Chesed, right? And Chesed said, Yivra, let the world be created. And Gevura said, don't create a world. Sorry. Chesed said, Yivra, and Emes said, Al Yivra, they shouldn't create the world. Familiar with this Medrash? My sidekick here would know the Medrash. He knows these kind of things. And it says that he threw down Emes to the ground and to create the world. That's why the pasuk says Emes me'eretz titzmach, because the Eibush had to Kaviyachol bury Emes into the ground in order to be able to create the worlds. And Emes and Gevura are synonymous, somewhat synonymous, because for reasons which we'll probably understand later on in the lesson more. And from Malchus, there is creation. However, there's a lot of Gevura involved. In other words, ultimately, Malchus, its main Yenika is from Gevura, because its main capacity is Taka to take the Eiris, withhold almost all of it, and only allow a small little ray, Ha'ar, into the world, which allows for the creation of the worlds. So therefore, since Malchus, at its essence, the essence of what Malchus is already the idea of Gevura, it does not need any extra dosage or any extra measure of Gevura. To the contrary, what we want to do is, if you want to have a more oir being able to filter through, so it needs a tesefas. It needs to have more oiris from Avram Avinu, which you got, the Hichsalim of Avram Avinu, as opposed to Malchus, which in Kabbalah it says that Malchus, Iker Binyana, is min hagvuris. Malchus, as it is, its main binyan, what it is, before it even gets any oiris, its main binyan already is from the Gevura. So that's why Yitzchak is absent from the list, not because Gevura is unimportant, but because Gevura already exists in Malchus in a very large way, which is why, again, you have Dina de Malchus Adina, Malchus Mishpat Yamid Aretz. These are physical reflections of the fact that Lamaila, the idea of Malchus, is very connected to the idea of Din.
Yeah, just a practical point. We said David was going to be dead, right?
Bar Naftali.
Bar Naftali was going to exist. His power, his of whatever word is, of his Malchus.
I'm sorry?
His thing of Malchus didn't exist. Maybe he should have had Yitzchak to start him off with his Malchus. We're making believe he's already the Melech. Now since he's the Melech, he doesn't need
Let's use the example of the sun and the moon. Because we know that the sun is Zah and the moon is Malchus. Does the moon need the sun to exist?
Does the moon need the sun?
To exist.
No. It's a reflection.
Okay. In order for it to give off oil, to give off light, for it to be productive, it needs the sun. When we say David is a bar nafli, means that without all the oiris malmailam, it would have existed, because Malchus, just like the moon exists independent of the sun, Malchus exists independent of the midas. The only thing is, it has nothing to transmit. Or let's put it in different words. And the other mashal that we give from Malchus is koyach hadibur. Now, if a person doesn't have seichel and midas, does that mean they don't have dibur? They can't talk. They can't gurgle. They have the koyach hadibur. Koyach hadibur exists. The only thing is, the koyach hadibur then has nothing what to give over. So Malchus David existed. Bar Nafla means that he wouldn't be able to have anything to give over to his people. Malchus wouldn't have, in other words, Lamaila means that Malchus wouldn't have had any oir for Biyah. Down here means that David wouldn't have what to give over to Mashbiah to Klal Yisrael. And when we say it exists, what is it? What is Malchus? Malchus is largely already Gvuris. It is the koyach to be, just like Dibur is the koyach to what is Dibur? Dibur it's a double-edged sword. Dibur is the ultimate halam and it's the ultimate gilui. On the one hand, when you speak, it's gilui, right? You're revealing to someone else. And it's your only way. Okay, I guess, I don't know, you can make hand motions or whatever, but even writing is also a form of dibur. What I'm saying is, dibur is our way of gilui. At the same time, does dibur really reveal everything that's going on inside me?
It's opposite. It's correct.
It's a big helen. And how many times do you say I'm at a loss for words? That's because a lot of times what's going on is way too much than to be able to transmit. So Dibur exists, Malchus exists. And the inyan of Dibur, the inyan of Malchus is that it has the capacity to withhold, which is very similar to the idea of Gevura. Now you need to add Oiris. You need to add what it should be able to be mashpia. So for that you need Chesed, for that you need Chachma, for that soon you'll see we need Yaakov's Midas Hatiferes. But Gevura, the idea of withholding, that's innate within Malchus itself. The moon has that capacity already before it gets the light from the sun. Clarified? Somewhat.
The Keli of Malchus is Gevura.
Right.
Now, what it's going to do with that Keli, the Iris, what it's going to give off is that the Chesed.
Exactly. So it needs to get the different Iris in order to be able. But the idea of Gevura, it's part and parcel of what it is. Yeah.
Because
Part of the hardware, like you said. Yeah.
In order to give over, you need Gevura. You need to hold back.
Well,
is that the reason?
Yeah. Well, Chesed gives over without holding back. But with Midas HaChesed, you would never have Elam Biyah.
But
you never have worlds.
It would be too much. Exactly. Right. So in order for Malchus to give over,
to Azulas, to someone else, which is Shalei B'Hadraga lower, yes, by definition, to create creations, you need to be able to withhold.
So that's why Malchus has Gvura.
Right. The Etzam. Okay, so now we have to move on to Yaakov Avinu. For Yaakov, Nasan LeDavid Chav Chashana, Yaakov gave to David 28 years. What's the connection between Yaakov and 28? What's the shaykhis? So Inyan Mashakasav and Meisher Ben Olav Shalom. So now we're going to learn something. We all know that Yaakov Avinu is Midas Hatiferes. But first we're going to learn about the idea of 28 and what he's giving, and then we're going to, after we finish this, we're going to find out the connection of what we're learning to Tiferes, why it's connected with Tiferes. So first we're going to move away a little from Tiferes and discuss an idea on its own, and then we'll move back and show how this is really what Tiferes is all about. This is what it says by Moshe Rabbeinu. He said in Parsha Shlach, he says, Yigdal no koyach adnai. He asked that the koyach of Hashem should be yigdal, should be made greater. And koyach over here is also, you have koyach, which is 28. So what is koyach adnai? What is the koyach of Shem, Aleph Daled Nun Yud? So hu hamilui umilui di milui shal Shem adnai. We know that every letter has a milui. So for example, Aleph, how do you spell Aleph? Aleph is spelled Aleph Lamed Pei. And Dalid is spelled Dalid Lamed Sof. And Nun is Nun Vav Nun, right? And Yud is Yud Vav Dalid. So, the milui of Shem Adnai is Lamed, the milui is the Lamed Pei, not the Aleph, because the Aleph is part of the word. There's the Lamed Pei from Aleph, the Lamed Samach from Dalid, the Vav Nun from Nun, and the Vav Dalid of the Yud. And then there's the Milui of the Milui. The Milui of the Milui is that Aleph, so the Milui of the Milui of Aleph is Lamed Pei. So Lamed has Lamed Mem Dalid, and Pei is Pei, however it's spelled, Pei Aleph or Pei Hey. The Milui of the Milui. So if you count the Milui and the Milui of Shem Admai, that adds up to 28 different letters. This is what Yaakov gave to David, the Koyach Admai, which means the Milui of Shem Admai. The Milui and the Milui of Shem Admai. The Inyan, what does this mean? Shem Admai hu Makir Dibiyah. Shem Admai is the Makir of Elam is Biyah. This is Takamidas HaMalchus. Umislabish behem, the name of Aleph Dad Nun Yud is mislabish in the world's lahach yesam. Ki shem adnus hu dafke ki sheshavad. Just like a melech needs to have an am, the idea of a odin, the idea of a master, is only shaykh when they're avodim. So the shame of Admai is the name which represents that the makir of all the worlds. Kameshakasav b'zayar, as it says in Zayar, the at yishtem moida, you are known as odin al koila. You are the master of everything. In other words, in order to have Adain, there has to be the Koila. You can't be a master without having the Nivraim.
Ein Melech B'Leia.
Sorry?
Ein Melech.
Similar to the idea of Ein Melech B'Leiyam. Yes. Pirush Milui Adnai. What is the meaning? What is the meaning of Milui Adnai? That is the Shem Adnai. Milui. Hainu bechinas hahelim shabai. The hidden part, mashe'eni yachal is galas b'biyah. That part which can't be niskal in biyah. Lach yoisam, to give them life. Will yois bechinas gilui ha'adnus v'asrara, and that it's not revealed in the lordship and in the rulership. Elanelam v'kamu suboy, but rather it's hidden there. Shezed nikra b'shem milui. This is called the milui. Al derech mashal hamilui shel eisya shel ateva. This is similar, for example, to the milui of the words of the letters of a word. Shebe bechinas halam v'haster. They're hidden toich eisan ha'eisius. In those letters, shari zulase eni shemea. The one who is listening doesn't hear them. The listener, only hears that which is coming out of the mouth mefurish. Shem gufa eisius. Those are the actual letters. Aval hamilui shalhem. But the milui kamos b'teichan is hidden bechinas halam. So if I say Shulchan, what do you hear? You're the listener. What do you hear? You hear Shin Vav Lamed Chas Nun. Now the fact is that Shulchan is made up of a Shin, which contains a Yud Nun, and the Vav, which contains another Aleph Vav, and the Lamed, but the listener doesn't know that. It's hidden. It's hidden within the word. It's there, but it's hidden. So Mili represents that which, now the word that you speak is that which is revealed, but there is what's behind the scenes, the koyach, which is behind it, and the energy which is behind it, which is hidden, which is, the word is a curtain that allows only a certain amount through, and not the rest. And that which is not allowed through the dibur, that is called the milui. The same thing. Beginnes Adnai, and the name of Shem Adnai who agilui hanimshach bebiyam lachisam. That is the gili which comes into the worlds of Biyah, Yitzir Nasiyah, to give him a life, Ayidei Mashu Adon Aleim, through the fact that the Eibishter, Hashem, is a master over the worlds of Malchus, Malchus Kol Elamim. And how the Eibishter's Malchus takes through all the worlds, Shezeu Gufa Hu Amachaya Eisam. This is what gives them life. It's Hashem's kingship and rulership that gives us life. But the Pnimius and Etzam cannot be revealed in Biyah. But it's hidden. And this is the milui sha'ila b'gematria chavches. The hainun, it's also related to the word koyach, because it's not just the gematria. In other words, the strength and the power, which is the pnimius, which is hidden, which is not revealed. And if you look in the Haggah, he says, Ayin biyurei hazer. Take a look in biyurei hazer. So I'm assuming this is the Biyurei Hazer from the Alter Rebbe. Both no, it can't be. There's a Sefer Biyurei Hazer authored by the Mittler Rebbe and a Sefer Biyurei Hazer authored by the Tzemach Tzedek. I doubt he's referring to his own Sefer. So he's probably referring to the Sefer by his father-in-law, the Biyurei Hazer. Parshas Tisa. Be'inyan Machza Shekel. Mavur Sham, it's explained over there. Pirush ve'inyan Milui. The idea of a milui shukmei adam hamadaber is like a person who's speaking. V'yashlei bazeh kavana amuka. And the person, when he's speaking, has a deep intention. She'ena niris begilim tech devar. You can't see it from his words. He's saying one thing, but there's a reason why he's saying it. But he's not saying the reason why he's saying it. Alashi eshlei b'moiche beishem medaber. That's in his mind. V'adibur in yenacher. The words he's saying is something else. That kavan is the pnimius of what he's speaking. The same thing also we can explain that you have milui adnai shu pnimius shem adnai, which is the pnimius of the name of Adnai Kinis Galil. What's interesting over here is that he talks over here. He doesn't spell this out clearly, but he starts off saying that chavchas is not only the milui but also the milui de milui. Right? And now he keeps on talking about the milui. I'm wondering if it's possible that in Shem Adnai again is Malchus, Sirius HaMalchus. So if you want to give over the pnimius of that, other words, what's behind it? What's behind Shem Adonai is the spheres of Atzilus, which aren't Begilui in Biyah. What is the Mili Demilui? The Mili Demilui would be Keser, would be higher than Atzilus, which makes sense with what he's going to say a little later over here. That Yaakov, that this is Taka. That we're talking about the line which goes to even higher than Atzilus. Well, because we're talking about Keser over here. We're talking about the Mili. Well, therefore, Moshe ben Olav Shalom, and therefore Moshe, when did he say Yigdal Nakei Chad? Like Sheratz Alham Shech Slicha Michal Yisroel. Al Chata Egel, when he wanted to be Mamshech, forgiveness to the Yidden for Chata Egel, Amar Yigdal Nakei Chad. Interesting.
So
I don't think this pasuk is in by the Chata Egel. This pasuk is by Meraglim. What he's saying is Chata Egel, unless it's a Rashi that what is brought down in different places that really they state in the Farshim that the plan was, by the Egel already was already decided that they're going to be punished, and it was just this was just the follow up, the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. But it's interesting that he says that here. Yes.
this trick is because this trick of Slach Na was given to him.
That's correct. In other words, the pasuk Yigdal Nakei Chadnei Kasher Dibarta Leimer Hashem Keil Racham V'Chanon.
Right.
That's when Hashem said it was over there. But Lepeil it says over here, Mamshir Mechil Esticha Yisrael Chata Egel. So he says, so what does Moshe say? Yigdal Nakei Chadnei Sheizgala Bechinas Hakoyach V'Helm Shel Shem Adonai Sha'idei Zeh Yeh Nesa Ave In. That through this, when you reach that high madrega, which is higher than Atzilus, that's where you bring out kapara. This is the madrega of erech hapayim, which is higher than Atzilus, which is kaser. Shehu noisa avin. And as we go on a little later today, we'll see a deeper connection why mechila of kapara has to come dafka from higher than Atzilus and from kaser, and why it's dafka through koyach adnai. Okay, so so what do we have so far? Yaakov gave to David the koyach adnai, which is the milui and the milui, Hashem adnai, which is the hidden, which is beyond that with dibur, which is even higher than Atzilus, and that's the same place from where mechila the kapara is nimshach from. The pasuk says, "Mikol chatei sechem." Lifnei Hashem titharu. We say that in Kippur many times. Chassidus explained that the idea of titharu, the idea of kapara, comes from lifnei Hashem, higher than Hashem. Lifnei means before. Lifnei Yudke Vavke. Yudke Vavke Bechlal is Atzilus. Yud is Chachman, Hey is Binan, Vav is Midas, and Hey is Malchus. The idea of kapara comes from higher than that. Comes from higher than Atzilus. In other words, in Atzilus Kaviyachol, there's Torah, there's mitzvahs, and if a person messed up on that, there isn't really any way to go about it. Kapara comes from higher than Atzilus. And that's also what Chazal tell us. Anyone who answers Amen Yisrael Chol Koiche, so even if there's Gzardin Shal Ayin Shana, so it's torn up. Pirush B'chol Koiche. What does it mean B'chol Koiche? So here is an interesting pshat. It doesn't mean Kol Eino Amen Yishmirab B'chol Koiche with your koyach, but on a deeper level, it could also mean that you say Amen Yishmirab B'chol Koiche with all the koyach of Amen Yishmirab. And you, again, note the word koyach over here.
What did he say koyach means over here?
Koyach is the milui of Shem Adonai. Yigdal na koyach Adonai. Because there's 28 letters in the milui, and the milui of Shem Adonai. So koyach represents that madrega. So he says, sheyesh b'chavchas esius. Am Yishmer has 28 letters. V'chein and also Yizgadol Adam Yishmer Abba Yishgam Ken Chavchas Tevis. From Yizgadol Tam Yishmer Abba, the 28 words. V'chein b'chein samili da Adonai. Shu koyach apnim yis da Adonai. By the way, this is interesting. I was looking this up. 28 letters and 28 words. I pulled out a siddur, and I started counting. And it isn't correct. Not the letters, not the words.
24.
What?
24.
No, it's more than 28. But I checked it up. As I stated in Kisvei Arizal. This is not the Tzemach Tzedek's Chiddush. Kisvei Arizal talks about the koyach of this. Anyways, so I decided, let me check a Nusach Ashkenaz. And a Nusach Ashkenaz said there's no Vyasa Pekani V'Karim Meshich. It's talking exactly 28 words until Amen Yeshmei Rabbah. And Nusach Ashkenaz, they say Le'olam Le'olmei Olmaya. Not Ula Olmei Olmaya. Maybe, I don't know, you have Nusach Sfard, not Nusach Hari, right? You say Le'olam Ula Olmei Olmaya or Le'olam Le'olmei Olmaya? Ula Olmei. So Nusach Ashkenaz, you say Le'olam Le'olmei Olmaya without the Vav. And if you don't have the Vav, it's 28 letters.
With the words Amen Yeshmei, not to the words.
No. There's two things. There's 28 words till Amen Yeshmei Rabbah.
Including Amen.
No, not including Amen Yeshmei Rabbah. Skadal v'skada Shmei Rabbah. Ba'olma di vrach Yerusei. V'yamlech malchusei. V'chayechen v'yimechen v'chay the whole base Yisroel. Ba'gala v'zman kari v'imru.
Now go back.
Oh, it's, and then you have, what's that? And then with Yeshmei Rabbah. This doesn't help you. So at 21, and then you have Yehei. Don't say Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Varach LaOlam LaOmei Olmaya 7. So sorry. Okay, it's 28 with it, and then Yehei Shmei Rabbah Varach LaOlam LaOmei Olmaya is 28 letters without the vav, which is fascinating because the Sudr Nusach Hari is the Chapi Nusach Harizal, and in the Kisvei Arizal it says that it's 28 and 28. But the truth is, as we know, there are many different Nusach Hariyos. It's not. There's
you're going to end up with a kasha anyway.
What's the that?
Say very good other ones, but he didn't use the other ones.
Yeah. It's a kasha. I don't have an answer to it, but it was just interesting how this goes. It's not according to Nusach Ashkenaz, and not according to Nusach Sfard. Again, it's surprising because the whole Nekudah that the Rebbe was siddur was to that it should be masim to all the kavanas. All the kavanas of the Arizal. That was like the whole big chiddush that it's okay, I guess there's some other kavanas that we have. Al Kapanim. So therefore, the idea of Amen Yeshmei Rabbah, which is again the idea of 28 times 2, is therefore because we are coming mamshich from that madrega of koyach adnai through Amen Yeshmei Rabbah, you're using the koyach of Amen Yeshmei Rabbah v'lachin koyrim le'gzar din al derech hanal b'Moshe, and that's why you're able to get kapara and you can have your gzar din destroyed like Moshe accomplished, because the idea of kapara and mechila and slicha comes from this madrega of koyach adnai, the madregas which are higher than atzilus. Okay. What does this have to do? What does all this have to do with Yaakov and with the Tiferes? Let's first do another 2 lines. This is also the idea of 28 years. Shanas and Yaakov David. Pirush, meaning Shehim Shecha'ara Zu Shehi Mili the Adnai V'Iker Koichoi. He was Mamshech the Mili the Adnai in this main Koich Lislabish B'Midas HaMalchus. Lislabish B'Midas HaMalchus HaMeira B'Malchus David. Okay, so what's the shaykh? So let's talk about Yaakov, about Tiferes. And we'll see it's mamish the same thing. We know the Mishkan, so there were brichim. Brichim, I don't know how you translate that to English.
Beams?
Not beams, like rods. That went through the walls. How much went through the walls? So there were 5 brichim on every single side. On top there was 2, and each one was halfway, and the bottom, halfway. And then there was the briach hatichoin that went through the krashim, the middle briach. Hamavriach min hakatza, as the pasuk says, hamavriach min hakatza el hakatza, it bored through from one end to another end. In fact, there's a medrash that says that it not only went through, because the pasuk mikra is that you had 3 briach hatikoins. One for each side, for the Ma'ariv and for the Tzaf and the Darim. The Medrash says they had one briach which miraculously, even though it was made out of wood, that it bent around. Yeah. So, as we already know, this is one thing that we should be clear with by now, that everything that there is begashmi is a reflection of beruchni. So why is it that taka, you have the other 2 only went halfway and the briach hatikin went all the way through? That's because the briach hatikin represents Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov Avinu, which is Midas Ha'emes, and Midas Ha'emes means it's a midah which has no ending to it, and that's why it goes from one end to the other end. And we see this also that that Yaakov Avinu was only one of the others that Taka had mitasi shlema, that his was by him his inyan, which is the idea of holiness and kedusha, went to every single one of his children, as opposed to Avram. There was a stop. By Yishmael, a stop. By Yitzchak, a stop. By Esau, by Yaakov, there was that idea of nitzchias. What is it about Yaakov? What is it about Yaakov that has this mehamavriach min hakatza ala katza, which in Chassidus means that Yaakov is mushish in the highest madrega and goes down all the way to the lowest madrega. As opposed to Avram and Yitzchak, they're not all the way into the highest madrega and they don't go all the way into the lowest madrega. What does that mean? So we know that Yaakov, so you mentioned before, Titan Emes Yaakov, we know that Yaakov is associated with Midas Emes, but there's also another Midah with which Yaakov is associated with, which is also, as we'll see, very strongly related to Emes. And that is the Midah of Rachman. You know, it says that Avram is Chesed, and Yaakov is, and Yitzchak is Gevura, and Yaakov is Teferes, which Teferes translates in Midas as Rachman. Why is it? So there are two things. First of all, what's the connection between Teferes and Rachman? What's the connection between Emes and Rachman? And also, I forgot the second question. Probably come to me as we go along. But what's the connection between all these inyanim? And the second question, is what is the difference between Chesed and Rachman? Chesed and Rachman are synonymous. If there would be a biblical thesaurus, you'd put a Chesed. I'm sure that Rachman would come up as a synonym for Chesed. What's the difference? And since Avram is Midas HaChesed and Yaakov is Midas HaRachman, we must say that it's not only a small difference, but we're talking here about a significant difference. So Chassidus explained, starting with the main place where this is in Negeres HaKodesh in Tanya and Siman Tesvav. So Chassidus explained like this. The Chesed, the idea of Chesed is, Chesed has very little regard for the recipient. I know that sounds strange. Gvura actually has a very strong regard for the recipient. Chesed is living in its own world and its desire to be mashpia, its desire to give. It therefore will give to almost anybody. Almost anybody. As long as he can find some sort of redeeming value, it has a desire. It is a desire to give. You know, the paradigm for this is Avram Avinu, who, you know, the Arabs who would bow down to the dust on their feet, he was giving to them also. So Chesed is about the need of the benefactor, of the giver. Yeah. Gevura, on the other hand, has a completely opposite perspective. Gevura doesn't need to give at all. Gevura looks at the recipient and says, how much does this recipient deserve? And that's how much it will get. Because I have no need to give. Gevura is all about looking at you and saying to the recipient, this is Midas Hadin. Din, by the way, doesn't mean, that's why if you remember the beginning of the class when I said Gevura is about withholding, it doesn't mean absolute withholding, it's willing to give. But its giving isn't really even called giving to a certain extent.
It's not Chesed.
Does your paycheck, does your boss give you a paycheck? Is he a giving person because he gives you a paycheck? No, you earned it. So Midas Hadin is the way it's supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be mitzad the recipient. And that's why Bechal Midas HaChesed is called, you know, Milmaila Lamata. You know, it's about the Milmaila, which comes down to the Lamata. And the Gevura is Milmata Lamaila. It's about the Milmata. It's the Milmaila is only responding to that which the Mata earned. And then there's Rachman. What is Rachman? So Rachman is in the middle. You know, Chesed on the right side, Gevura on the left side. Rachman is in the middle. And it also, Rachman combines both Chesed and Gevura. And that's why it's called Teferes. That's why it's called beautiful. Because for something to be beautiful, it has to be a synthesis, a combination. Right? If you look, if you know, don't expect to go into an art gallery and see a painting which is all blue, a single shade of blue. That's not beautiful. Beautiful is bringing together and harmonizing different colors, or don't go to a concert and expect to hear one tone. The whole idea of beauty is when adrabah, you can bring together different tones, different types of voices, and in all areas of life. So what is rachmim? On the one hand, rachmim is willing to give, and is willing to give more than the person earned. So in that respect, it's different than gevura. It's more chesed. But it doesn't give indiscriminately, as does chesed. It doesn't give indiscriminately, but it gives based on need. Chesed doesn't give based on need. Chesed gives based on the need of the giver. Gevura to gevura, need doesn't mean anything. So therefore, rachmim is this. It's in between. It's in between. Therefore, you can give to someone who completely isn't deserving of it, but the person needs it. Bepashtus also, this is teferes. Why is it teferes? It's beautiful. Because giving indiscriminately is not beautiful. Giving indiscriminately can do a lot of damage. On the other hand, withholding and giving only to those who deserve it, also, you wouldn't say that's beautiful either. When you say, Ezi derech sheyaver le'adam kol sheteferes le'min adam, right? That's lashon. Beauty is that you're giving, but it's discriminate giving. But not discriminate necessarily saying only those who earn it, but even more than that also. But what is Tiferes? Now we asked before, what is Malchus? So Tiferes, the way we're describing it, it would almost seem like Tiferes isn't an entity on its own. It's taking a little chesed, taking a little gevura, putting it together, and then you have a new product called Tiferes. But then you wouldn't need this. If Tiferes was only a mixture of chesed and gevura, then you wouldn't need Tiferes. Then you take a little chesed and take a little gevura, and you wouldn't need a separate midah, a separate sphere called Tiferes. In other words, Tiferes, there's something, it's something independently. It has its own agenda, which we have to figure out what that is. And moreover, what's driving it? What's driving Tiferes? Why is it giving based on need? Chesed, why is it giving? Because Chesed feels a need to give. It's really about itself. It's not about the recipient. Gevura is about cultivating the needs, and cultivating not the needs, but cultivating the tachton. It's about focusing on the other. What is the agenda of Tiferes? Why is it giving based on need? So ultimately, it's explained in Chassidus. The reason why Tiferes is giving based on need is because, as we started out saying earlier,
Tiferes giving more than need.
No, Tiferes gives based on need,
Gevura gives?
based on what is earned, what is deserved. Why is Tiferes giving based on need? And this is what we said about Yaakov Avinu. That is mafriach min hakatza lakatza. Tiferes, because it's the kav hamtzoi, the middle line goes up all the way to keser. Even if you see those diagrams, you know what I'm talking about. It goes up all the way to keser. And keser means Hashem. This is Hashem's ratzon, and Hashem is tainug. The inner dimension of Hashem. Pre-creation, pre-everything. The plan for everything, the desire for everything. And over there, giving is take based on need. But what is the need? The need of Hashem. Who is going to receive something? If Hashem needs you, you'll receive. It's a very different perspective than Chesed and Gevura. Because Chesed and Gevura is, are you focused on the giver, or are you focused on the recipient? And Tiferes is refocused on Hashem's agenda, which is that Hashem needs a world and needs a dir b'tachtonim, and therefore the giving of Hashem is going to be based on that need, the need of Hashem. And that's why Taka, the Mechila and Slicha comes from Rachamim. Hashem Kel Rachum, which is based in higher than Atzilus, because basically what Moshe was telling to Hashem is, They might deserve it, they might not deserve it. Even Midas HaChesed might not be interested in giving them. But Mitzad Midas HaRachamim, which is Makar and Shoyrish is Mavriach Men HaKatza LaKatza, Mitzad, this is your nation, you need these people. And you have to be mashpia based on need. So the agenda of Tiferes is the agenda, it's really, that's what we say, Tiferes, the Milui. This is what we're talking about, the Milui, the Koyach, the Milui of Shem Adonai. The agenda of Tiferes is actualizing Hashem's agenda over here and his objective in this world, and is mashpia in those places necessary in order for that Hashem's needs to be fulfilled.
Saying Tiferes is based on the person's needs. Saying the person's needs?
No, God's needs.
So now we're understanding at a simple level means the person needs. On a deeper level, Rachmim is talking about the needs of Hashem.
The person needs what Hashem needs him for.
Yeah. So now we understand also what it means that Keser is Mavriach min HaKatza el HaKatza, as opposed to Avram and Yitzchak. Chesed and Gevurah. Because Chesed and Gevurah each have a certain agenda. Chesed is about giving. Gevurah is about withholding. Now they're both Midas and Kedusha. But from giving and withholding, ultimately, bad things can come from both of them. And that's why Yishmael comes from Avram Avinu. And Yishmael is chesed of Klippa. Meaning that Yishmael is, the Arabs are Shtufei Zima. They're into Ava and Chesed in a Klippa way. Because ultimately, Chesed, because it has a certain agenda, which is giving can also be perverted. I mean, perverted in other words...
And the agenda is...
Yeah, and it could ultimately end up in Klippa. Gevurah is about withholding, and ultimately that can end up in being cruelty, which is Esav. Sorry, what? Edom, which is, which is Pashat, simple cruelty. But why? Because neither of them are firmly based, essentially, on the Kavanah Elyoina. They're both Midos. They're both Rachamim, which is in the middle, is firmly based on the Kavanah Elyoina. It borrows from Chesed as needed. It borrows from Gevurah as needs, because sometimes it will give and sometimes it will withhold. But it itself is above both Chesed and Gevurah. Yes, it takes from both of them, but it's mushish and higher, and that's why it's min hakatza la katza. As low as it will come, it will never become klipa. And that's why it's mushish in the highest level. In other words, it's rooted in keser, higher than chesed and gvura, and it comes down much lower than them, because in other words, and wherever it goes, it remains emes, it remains kedusha. As opposed to chesed and gevura, they're not emes, they're not midas emes, because at a certain point they can change forms and they become klipa. So that's the connection between rachmim and emes and tiferes, right? All these things. And if that is what midas hatiferes is, now we understand why it's Yaakov who was giving to David the koyach, the 28 years, the koyach out, the milui, because this is mamish the idea of tiferes. Tiferes is the milui of Shem Adonai. Is not all is the madregas which are higher, rachmim, tiferes and rachmim, which is madregas which are higher than atzilos, and that's nimshach through Yaakov, through tiferes, which is mavriach min hakatza al hakatza. It's amazing how everything comes together. Yeah, let's do this inside. Yaakov is the middle briach. Shemavriach man hakatza el yoyin min katza el yoyin the keser. It bores from the highest level of keser ad katza tachtena the malchus to the lowest level of malchus. Kihu b'chines rachmim. Because malchus is the idea of rachmim. By the rachmanis me'eder me'mayla. Through rachmanis can me'eder from the highest levels. Mishakasu b'rachamecha rab m'racham aleinu. Lachein hu dafke. That's why it's dafke him. Shehim shechboi b'chines chavchas esi is the mili hanal. That's why he was mamshich to David the 28 esi. So therefore, what do we have? In simple words, we could have done 3 words. We could have said that Yaakov gave to David Sfiras Midas HaTiferes, Midas HaRachmim, which is really, that's all what we learned right now. But we understand a much deeper understanding of what the function of Tiferes and Racham is, and also we understand why it's related to the number 28, which is what he gave to.
You don't explain why it was Yaakov to Abraham's years and not to his father's years.
Right. No, I don't have an answer
for
for
that. Interesting.
Yeah. Listen, that's the difference between learning Chassidus and learning Gemara. You learn Gemara, you have a question, so you go on Yitzhak Chachma. Someone is bound to speak about it. Yeah. If I'm like this, I mean, I know there's a reason. I just don't know. I don't know what it is. But that's why is it that Yaakov?
Very interesting.
Yeah. Because Yitzhak should have lived like 180, right?
And Yosef is also Yaakov. Each one is their father. So
That's the question, why we're comparing Yaakov to...
No, because the years given up were based on Abraham's death as opposed to Yitzchak's death. After the year of Chesed, it has to do from how it gets in me. I'm not supposed to Gvura, but...
It would seem to be the easy answer. B'chlal, because it's in Taka says that Rachbim, even though it has both, it's Mata Klape Chesed. But the problem with that is, but it says that Yaakov should have been Yitzchak should have been 180. I'm sorry, that Avram should have been 180. Which means that Chesed really is 180. So you can't really answer that answer. It doesn't, it's interesting. And then Yosef was supposed to live like Yaakov. Because the Yaakov was supposed to live like,
Okay.
Yosef Nasam LeDavid Lamed Zayin Shana. Yosef gave David 37 years. Who Yutzfiris? Yosef gave to David the entire Yutzfiris. Obviously, not going to have the ability to delve so deeply into Yosef today, but let's get a little start. Yosef represents Midas HaYisoid. Yosef is Tzaddik Yisoid Elam. Now, Yisoid and Malchus, Yisoid is Mashpia. The purpose of Yisoid is to be Mashpia into Malchus. Everything. All the 10 spheres, including Malchus, should be Yisoid. Why you have to have Yisoid, we'll talk about that more next week. But the first thing we have to know is that Yosef, it's not enough. Whatever David got from Adam, and then from Avram, and then what he naturally has from Yitzchak, and then what he got from Yaakov, for whatever reason, Yisroel has to now re-give everything over all the 10 spheres. And that's 37 years. Who Yud spheres, 37 corresponds to the 10 spheres. Ki Gimel Rishonis Nikroim Lamid. Gimel Rishonis, in other words, the Chachma Bin and Das are called the Gimel Rishonis, and the Midas are called the Zayin Tachtonis. We'll have it in a second. So Gimel Rishonis, the first three, which is Chachma Bin and Das, is Nikra Lamed, this is 30. Each one contains all 10 spheres. The Zayin Tachtonis Nikra Zayin. The 7 Midas are 7. Ukinyin Amavur Bezoyar Bepirush Vayi Shnei Chayisara. Explained in the Zohar and the Pasuk Vayi Shnei Chayisara. It says Meir Shana. So we know it says the Chatzar lives Meir Shana, V'Esrim Shana, V'Sheva Shana. And each one it says Shana. It doesn't say Meir V'Esrim Sheva Shana because each one is a different madrega. Meir Shana, it says in Zohar, is B'chinas Keser. Because 100 represents all the spheres as they are included within each other, which is perfection. And where do you have that perfection? That's in Keser. Where the whole thing is included in one, all 10 are included of all 10. Absolute Achdus. The Esrim Shana, the 20 years, is Abba Ve'ima, is Chachma Bina. Shakol Echad, the Kol Ma'eser. Each one is included from 10. So therefore that's Keser, and this is Moichin, right? The Sheva Shanim Hein Zayin Tachtoinus. The 7 years are the Zayin Tachtoinus, the 7 spheres. The Kachu Inyan Lamed Zayin the Yosef. That's also that you have 37 at Yosef. Shagimul Rishonis Nekraim Lamed. The Chacham Bin Adas is 30. The Zayin Tachtoinus Hein Zayin Kemisparam are 7. So the obvious question that we have over here is that what?
Is it,
What?
Shiva.
You have to be consistent. Either it should be 3 and 7, altogether 10, or it should be at what?
30 and 7.
30 and 7.
Right. Which should be a problem because then it's 100, then you think it's Kesser. But that's a technical problem. In other words, but why are these color of 10 and these color? Yeah. So I spent some time trying to find out. And I didn't find a direct answer to this question, but I was looking in the Chayisar Mamarim actually to see what it talks about over there, and I believe that the answer comes out b'derech Mamela. The big question that it's asked in many Mamarim, why is it? It says Vayiyu Chayisara is Meya Shana, Ve'esrim Shana, Ve'sheva Shanim. Either it should be Meya Shanim, Ve'esrim Shanim, Ve'sheva Shanim, or it should be Meya Shana, Esrim Shana, Ve'sheva Shana. They're all plural. So to explain the Ma'arim that in Keser there's absolute unity over there, even though that includes all 10 spheres, and all 10 spheres is the Kol, therefore it's still Shana, because there's absolute unity over there. The same thing is when it comes in a lower level, but in a similar level in Moichin, in Chachma and Bina, and also here in Das. So there's also the idea of iskalus, of unity with each other, because again, the higher you are, the more bottle you are, the more you're able to be bisachtus with everything else. And that's why there's also a Shana. But when it comes to the Midas already bischalkos. Midas already taka, the very distinct one from another. Even Pashat, Chachma and Bina aren't opposites one from another. Or Das, they all complement each other. Chesed and Gevura are opposites one from another. So the idea of Ischalkos begins be'ikr in Midas, and it's also because in Midas is where Yeshus really begins. We discussed this in another Mamarim, but Yeshus really begins in Midas. Where does I begin? Subjectivity begins in Midas. In Seichel is objective. So therefore over there you have Shanim. So I think that l'chayra you could probably say the same thing. That's why by the Seichel, that's why you have 30, because each one is kolul, because there's a lot of aktus over there, a lot of iskalus, a lot of bittul. By the time it comes down to midas, over there every midah is very, very distinct. And even though taka, each midah also contains the others, but what you see, what's apparent, is this idea of that every midah is distinct and is very powerful. Midas are more powerful than Seichel, as a rule. Oh, July 4th. And Yashleimar, I'll look into this a little, maybe a little more before next week, but Yashleimar, that's why you have the 30 versus the 7. We have to understand, what is the idea that he gave the Gimel Shenes? We know that Adam already gave the Chachma. And the same question obviously also with regards to Midas. And the answer to this we will learn in Mirz Hashem whenever we have the next year. If next week or whenever.